Welcome back to Edgework on the Hammer Betting Network. I'm host Jason Cooper here with Alex Moretto, Matt Russell, and Todd Cordell here to break down tonight's NHL slate. And we're going to react. Usually we react to the previous night's game, but it was a little thin slate, so we're going to take it in a different direction. Guys, how you guys feeling today? How did you guys bets go last night? How are things going?
It was a bit rough last night, and it really didn't have anything to do with the bets for me, because the key number, the key total last night was under how many kids came to my front door for trick-or-treating and over how much of the leftover candy I ate last night. So I almost didn't make it through the countdown there because I might have just full-on organ failure across the board. So a bit of a rough go here this morning, but I'm excited to be here to talk some hockey with you guys.
Yeah, I'm going to need a good dentist soon.
That's all right. Well, I was doing the primetime show last night. Guys, if you love the NFL, you should check out the Hammer HQ on YouTube. We do a live halftime show, and I had people come in and ringing the doorbell. I was freaking out, but luckily it wasn't able to come up on stream. Hopefully no one's ringing the doorbell here today. But let's get into today's topics, guys. Instead of reviewing and looking at what happened last night, there was only 3 games. We're going to do something a little different here. I think it's a great idea. We got a game of panic or patience. And we're just going to go through a couple teams that we think have been struggling or performing under expectation to start the year, about 10 games into the season. And we're going to see if we should be panicking, if they should be in panic or if they should be in a patience mode. So to kick things off, we're going to start with the St. Louis Blues. St. Louis Blues have really been struggling as of late. They lost to the Los Angeles Kings last night, 5-1. Binnington doesn't seem to be the guy he used to be. They were really hot last year, riding that third line with a high shooting percentage. Todd, I'm going to start with you and kind of throw you out there for the St. Louis Blues. What do we think? Are we in panic mode for the Blues, or are we in patient mode for the Blues?
I'm in a little bit of panic mode because, as you mentioned, Jordan Binnington's playing really poorly. And this year they don't have a backup like Ville Husso who can kind of take the ball and run with it if he struggles. So if there's going to be some shooting regression for the Blues, or they're just not as deep as they were in the past, I don't think they have the goaltending to kind of survive that.
Fair enough.
Jordan Binnington only wakes up for the important meetings, right? Like he only sort of shows up playoff time, but they got to get there first. And so, I hadn't really paid that much attention to the Blues, who are a team that I actually liked, sort of dark horse Stanley Cup outside of the top, kind of 10 on the odds board at the start of the season. And, they still have everything there theoretically. But then when we started talking about this in meeting for this show, I look up at where my ratings would have if I just used this season, and they're like third last, second last in the league. That snuck up on me, maybe because they were the last team to actually play a game. And I don't know if that had anything to do with it. Maybe they just thought they didn't have to play the regular season hockey this year because they were the 32nd team that actually had to play. If there was ever a reason to panic, and I'm usually just, don't panic, but like, what are they going to do? Right. I mean, I guess the only other option is get a sort of better second option in net that could sort of take over here. But I don't know where you're going to find that because we're sort of too early into the season for anybody to kind of sell off a decent goaltender. So it's sort of like panic, but you kind of just have to ride it out here, which honestly, that's kind of my theme throughout the early parts of the season all the time. But man, the numbers are ugly right now.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head too when you said like Binnington shows up for the important meetings, right? Like this is a Blues team that is very much a team that is built for the playoffs, I think. It's just a matter of will they make the playoffs, right? Because they kind of remind me of those Habs teams a few years ago that like you're not going to have these great regular seasons, but like if you get in, you have the recipe to make a run at least. So like they're that sort of team. But like we're looking at 5 straight losses now. Last year, they obviously had a great season, but they drastically outperformed their underlying metrics. And a lot of that was down to Ville Husso, who had an incredible few stretches that really pushed them through some rough patches of performances. And they don't have that this year. They can't lean on that. Their numbers are still pretty bad right now. And Binnington isn't picking up the slack the way, Husso was able to. So yeah, I'm definitely concerned that they have the goaltending to mask these inefficiencies right now. For me, it's definitely a panic on the Blues.
But it's funny though, right? Because a lot of it it's all relative. If Colorado, for example, was out to some Colorado and hot start, you'd be like, okay, they're so far behind. But like Colorado, 9 games, 9 points right now, right? And then you go down to St. Louis and it's like 8 games, 6 points. And when we overreact or we just react to a lot of these teams this early in the season, there's going to be another one that we talk about here a little later on that's been featured the last couple of weeks, but it's like, all you need is to string together like 2 wins, and all of a sudden the standings change drastically because it's so, early on here. So, again, like Jordan Binnington, if it wasn't for the fact that he kind of, again, phoned in the regular season last year, I wouldn't be really all that panicked. And again, the numbers are so shaky that they are literally, I was just looking it up, they're tied for 3rd worst with the Blue Jackets this season. Like, you don't want to be in the Blue Jackets zone. You don't want to go full Blue Jackets, right? You don't want to be the Blues Jackets at this point. Yeah. So, you know what I mean? Like, again, part of it is you have to kind of look up and go, like, where is Colorado? Because the idea is, in theory, to like, let's just be better than them, try to pull that off. And if Colorado is going to be only kind of mediocre and their numbers aren't any great either to start this season, then at least you kind of you're buying yourself some time there. Or Colorado is in effect buying the Blues some time here to get it together.
But Colorado has the priors to lean on and be like, okay, this is why I don't trust the numbers currently. To like, it's not a fair representation of the team, right? Whereas the Blues don't have that. They didn't have that last year, but like they were able to mask that by just getting this like insane stretches of goaltending from Husso. So that's why like it's a little bit more concerning to see them start slow than a team like the Avs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and on to another team who's kind of in a similar situation, who last year looked really good, was, again, riding an incredible on-ice shooting percentage with the Nashville Predators. That first line with Duchesne looked like it looked like the past Duchesne that we saw in Ottawa and Colorado. But I don't know if UC Saros he hasn't playing as good as we expect him. Like, some people thought he had a potential to win the Vezina this year. Are we as concerned about them as we are the Blues? Same question, guys. Panic or patience? Matt, let's start with you.
So again, all things relative, right? Like, what was our expectation? My expectation was slightly above average. Right now, the metrics that I deem important are about slightly above average. And, Saros he's awake for all the meetings, essentially, right? Like, this is a guy who has been really good in the regular seasons past. You don't have that sort of attitude of like, I've already won a Stanley Cup. Like, I don't have to kind of show up until April, blah, blah, blah. Right. And, just sort of touching, one last second there on the Blues is like, Binnington kind of got away with it last year, right? Where they're like, yeah, we're not going to take your, your job's not going to go away here. Ville Husso kind of gave it back to him in the playoffs. So it's sort of like a negative reinforcement, positive reinforcement. I don't forget how that all works. But with Saros, it's like, we know that he's going to be good, or at least we think he's still going to be good over the course of the regular season. The metrics are way better for Nashville than they are for St. Louis. They're way better for a lot of teams than they are for St. Louis right now. So again, I'm not expecting them. I wasn't thinking that they might have a chance to like compete for the division or this, that, or whatever. Like, I think it's probably a team that kind of just barely makes the playoffs, sort of the way we've seen with the Predators over the last few years. So if that's the bar, they can absolutely reach that bar. Like, that's fine.
Yeah, Saros has made something of a habit of heating up as the season wears on too. Like, he's not a stranger to slow starts. So I think I'm a bit more of, on the patience scale with the Predators. The offense has been sputtering though. It is a small sample. The one thing I'd be slightly panicking about is that this is a team that was supposed to take a step forward this year based on the moves they made in the offseason. So like, if you expected them to take that next step, maybe you can be panicking a little bit, but in general, I think they'll be fine, kind of right on par with what they were last season, which was a playoff team that, they didn't necessarily compete with Colorado, but like they had their moments in that series. And another reason I think I'm not panicking here is just how a lot of the teams around them in the Central have looked. Like the Blues, who we talked about, they look worse. The Wild are struggling. I'm not sure what the fix for them is in net. The Stars are a team I'm pretty high on overall, and they've generally performed to expectations. But I think the Central looks a lot more negotiable than we thought it was coming into the season.
Yeah, fair enough. And yeah, I think I'd echo that sentiment. Keep patience with the Blues, with the Preds. Speaking of blue and white, and I have my head thinking about the blue and white all the time, the Toronto Maple Leafs, another team that we're going to get into, panic or patience. Their start seems to look a lot like last year, but if you dig deeper, the underlying metrics aren't really there to support that this team could get better. Alex, I know you love talking about the Leafs, so why don't you take us through this one?
Yeah, so I was a panic on the Blues, patience on the Predators. I think I come somewhere in the middle with the Leafs. I'm patient if we're talking about being worried that like they're in danger of missing the playoffs or this is not a good hockey team. Like, then I'm a full patience. Like, this is obviously not a bad hockey team. This is a good hockey team that will still make the playoffs. But I am a bit of a panic if we're talking about them as like legitimate cup contenders, because I think there are some serious flaws on this team that will hold them back from taking that step that everyone's been waiting for them to take. The forward depth is one of them, at least the scoring depth up front. That was a bit of an issue last year, and it's gotten even worse this year. So that's nowhere close to where I think it needs to be to win in this league. It's not something you can rebuild during the season either. Goaltending probably isn't where it has to be. Obviously, like one of Murray or Samsonov can get hot, but like to have to rely on that is tough. And then there's obviously, you have your concerns on the back end with, Muzzin's injury kind of forcing Hall into an everyday role. Brody's declining play. Can you rely on Giordano? So I think there are some issues there. They're going to keep them from taking that next step. But overall, like this is a playoff team that I think will still easily finish top 3 in the Atlantic.
Yeah. And aren't we just like spinning around the same carousel over and over and over with the Toronto Maple Leafs?
Oh yeah.
Like if you want to put the panic button into play here, it's organizationally, right? It's the concerns about, the way this team was built and the general manager and all that sort of thing. So if you're hitting the panic button, like what are you doing? You're firing the coach, right? And it's like, we're just going to do that every single time and just go around and around and around the carousel. Like, okay, like if you want to, but like it's still fundamentally the same guys who, when we get around to April or, God forbid they actually made it to May, like are still going to kind of like, flame out. Now, people are talking about, again, it's all about the bar. They were right underneath Colorado for like a second choice, basically. And it's like, can you imagine a different circumstance between Colorado, who's like slowly build their way up, in the second round all the time, but couldn't quite break through. And then, of course, win the Stanley Cup, to this team that just like always loses in the first round. And it's like, so what is the bar? If you want to keep putting the bar at Stanley Cup, then like, yeah, go ahead, panic, start firing people, like start trading guys, which they're never going to do. They're not going to trade the bar. But yeah, but that's the point, right? And it's like, so what are we even talking about with regards to that? Like from a panic standpoint, yeah, the metrics aren't very good right now. Short, again, short sample size, the like California road trip, always kind of like sketchy, all of that sort of stuff. It's like, we're just going around the carousel. So just ride it out. Like we'll reevaluate this later on. It isn't a situation where, listen, St. Louis has a lot of stuff that they need to do, but like in theory, they might just need to get another goaltender in there. Like that's not what this is for Toronto. They don't have any room to get another goaltender in there. And by the way, like Matt Murray was just never going to be an option, a reliable option in the first place. That's why that was so funny when they signed him back then. So like, yeah, okay, let's just keep going around in a circle if we want here. Panic, patience, whatever. But like, unfortunately, any panic button you have isn't going to work. You have to take patience here. And of course, that's not exactly what the Toronto market's known for.
Absolutely not. Like it feels like the same thing every year. Like always put 10 games in, let's push the panic button, fire everyone, dismantle the core. And then every year, this team just seems to, I don't know. They seem to do well and then flare out in the playoffs. It's clockwork. It's painful.
They still haven't made those changes, right? They still like it's the same thing every year, but no changes are ever made.
And they'll get hot, and Matthews will get his 50, and everybody will be able to like high five about 50 goal season, and then like we'll just redo the same thing over and over and over again. So like, exactly, what is the bar? What is panic? What is patience? It's just all nothing at this point.
Fair enough. It's just I always have this pit in my stomach whenever I talk about the Leafs, being a Leafs fan. But anyways, on to tonight's game, what everyone is kind of looking for. We're going to recap or preview 2 or 3 games before, and then we're going to get into some best bets of the night. And if you're watching on Twitter, guys, come check us out on YouTube. You can interact with us live. If you have any comments or questions, we can answer them live. If you're tweeting at us on Twitter, we just can't see it right now. So if you're on Twitter, come check us out on YouTube. You can find us in the description of the Edgework show on Twitter. Our link tree's there. Our YouTube is there. Hit the subscribe button. So to start off our games tonight, we have the Devils versus the Canucks. Quinn Hughes has been out for the last couple of games. Brock Besser is looking to be a game time decision. He's also been out for the last couple of games. He looks like he's leaning more towards not playing than playing. Jack Hughes and the Devils been on a hot streak. They just beat Columbus 7-1. Todd, I know you're a big Devils fan. What's your view on tonight's game?
I played the Devils yesterday at plus 100. I believe they're minus 120 or minus 125 now, which is more the range I think it should be. But I still would have a small edge on the Devils. By pretty much every metric, they've been the best 5-5 team in the league. They're finally getting some competent goaltending right now, so they're just kind of steamrolling everybody. I do think the Canucks are starting to play better. And obviously getting Quinn Hughes back is huge, but I still think the Devils have too much depth, too much team speed, and I think they can cause the Canucks decent problems because outside of Hughes, they still don't really have any puck movers. So I think this is going to be really like a Demko game. If he plays really well, I think the Canucks can win. If he's kind of the guy we've seen so far, I think the Devils will probably pick up a multi-goal victory.
Nice. And sorry, go ahead, Alex.
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, like that's the thing that at this price, I think, you know, it's pretty fair. And Demko heating up is the one thing that would definitely keep me off the Devils here, because obviously, like, you know, Devils have got good goaltending in the last few games, but again, small sample, so it's hard to like sort of lean on that or rely on that. You also have to wonder how sustainable this start is for the Devils. If Quinn Hughes is in and like somehow the Devils take more money, this gets to like plus 115 or so on like on the Canucks, then like maybe you consider a play there. But I think the line is pretty good where it's at here.
Yeah, I would need Besser and Hughes to be back. And even then, I would probably need something closer to plus 120. The Devils before the season, right? They're lined at 91.5 points. That is dead nuts even, right? Like that is the definition of an average team. And when I start pumping in my numbers for my overall ratings now that we're in sort of the 10 to 15% range here with regards to, you know, games played so far in the season, and we're taking a little off of the priors, the Devils, of course, because we all know like they're now all of a sudden the greatest team in the history of hockey from a metric standpoint, just like through the roof type stuff here with a change towards the positive, where they all of a sudden become sort of 13% above average. And so there's a minus 112, a minus 113 out there on the Devils. I think that's playable. I agree with you, Todd. The fair price here is probably minus 125 plus 125. So anything sort of under or minus 115, if you can find it, is certainly worth a play on the Devils. We'll see what happens with Hughes and Besser. You know, sort of taken a little bit off of the win probability, obviously, when they were out, and we're sort of putting a little bit of that back on here, thinking that they might be back. But even still, I think this is there's a better chance the Devils stay hot here than the Canucks all of a sudden, who, red hot Canucks who won back-to-back games. And again, look at the standings, right? All of a sudden, like, they're within shouting distance of, some of the teams ahead of them, and it doesn't look all that bad, but it might look kind of rough to hear tonight against the Devils.
And Ethan Bear making his debut tonight too, I think, for the Canucks.
Massive addition.
Big Bear fan, hey?
Oh, yeah.
All right, well, on to the next game. We have the Habs against the Minnesota Wild. Wild have looked awful to start the year, around 50% expected goal share, 50% Corsi share. That's not like them. That's not like the Wild that we've seen of past years. They're going up against Montreal. Montreal was closed at like a plus 210 underdog in their last game. Got up to plus 240. They ended up winning 5-2. Is this a play we're going to make again? Like, are we looking at the Montreal Canadiens? They're sitting at plus 214 right now. Alex, do you think that's something we should be looking at?
I don't have a play on this game. I do think that these are two teams that are interested to talk about right now, though. Like, they're both experienced very different starts to the season. So you have the Wild, who are struggling to generate offense like they did last year. Defensively, they've had a rough go at it. Their expected goals against numbers aren't as bad as their actual goals against numbers, but they're just not getting the goaltending right now. I'm not sure what the fix is there. Until we see this start to rectify itself, I'm not sure how we can be paying these prices on the Wild. Like, they're just a bad team to bet on right now, considering how they're being priced. And then conversely, you have the Canadiens that are actually a very good team to bet on right now with how they're being priced. So their priors are obviously being heavily weighed into their market price here. But if you look at how they performed under St. Louis, this is a much better team than they're kind of being credited for. Still not a good team, but definitely not a bad team either. So there will be a lot of opportunities, I think, to back them at long prices before the market catches up. Like, Allen and Montembeault are providing good goaltending, which was definitely an area of concern coming into the season. Their very young blue line has held up quite well, actually. Like Caden Gooley, Jordan Harris, these guys have played very good hockey. Obviously, they're not getting the market respect, though, considering the small sample sizes. So I think that there will be time before we sort of catch up to the Habs here. And then you look at them up front, like, this is a very deep team. You can say that maybe they don't have the superstars up front, but like Caulfield and Suzuki are point per game players under St. Louis, right? And then you have guys like Monahan, Dvorak, Anderson, Slavkovsky, Gallagher. Like, these guys are adding in some secondary scoring. So I'm not really in a rush to bet this game itself, but I think it's something to bear in mind going forward, that the Wild are a good team to bet against right now, while the Habs are a good team to bet on for the time being.
And this is a good game for me to stay away from because I have this game lined pretty much accurately, right? Which doesn't do me any good if I'm dying to bet on the Canadians and the Wild tonight. But it sort of allows me to look back and be like, yeah, okay, I was, pretty correct in seeing value on Sunday when I bet on, what was it, Chicago? It was a shootout. Yeah, Chicago and Minnesota. And, they go to a shootout, right? And I'm sitting there with, plus 170 or whatever. And it's like, how did I get here losing another shootout with a plus 170? What else is new? And then even before that, right? Like fading Minnesota in their prior game where they lost in Detroit, I believe it was, right? And so you go, okay, like I've got a pretty good handle right now on this Minnesota team. And I also now have a pretty good handle on this Montreal team from a rating standpoint. And so it just kind of confirms like, yeah, you've got this kind of figured out. Then maybe next time when I see value on or against Montreal or on or against the Wild, that at least I kind of have this kind of, home base here from a rating standpoint.
Yeah, and I just want to say, I think it's a kind of gross matchup for Minnesota. They'll probably control the run of play, but Montreal is one of those teams that they'll get hemmed in a little bit, and then they'll get a transition opportunity from the big guns, and they'll put it in the back of the net. And with Minnesota not getting any saves, I don't want to get involved in that. Like, it strikes me as the kind of thing where you check the box score and the shots are 30-16 and it's 2-2 and you're like, why am I doing this? So I'm not paying that price to do that.
That's 100% what will happen.
Yeah. It sets up nice, and that's what you want from your plus 200 and change underdogs, right? Unfortunately, I'm going to need something like plus 250, and of course we're looking kind of in the plus 200 plus 210 range, so a little bit out of my price range.
And that's why the Habs are kind of a good team to bet on right now, because last year it was the same thing, but they weren't getting that scoring. Like under Ducharme, it was just not happening. Like they wouldn't take those chances. Their high danger chances were still pretty low. And like now under St. Louis, they've kind of gone through this transition where suddenly they're burying these opportunities. They're putting them in the back of the net and they're getting that secondary scoring. So, it becomes a lot more of an attractive team to back at these prices.
That's a good note moving forward. Don't weigh too heavily on preseason priors. That kind of gets us into our next game, the Bruins and Pens. We talked about the Bruins the last 2 weeks on this show, on the Tuesday show. We like the Bruins here. I think Matt was saying last week that it seems like the betting market is focusing too much, like Montreal, on those preseason priors. I think those preseason priors kind of expected a lot of their injuries not to be settled this soon in the season, but Marchand's back. They're looking great. I believe they're first in the NHL, but again, 1 or 2 losses can change that. The Bruins are an underdog, though, heading into Pittsburgh. Matt, what do you think about them?
So I think the market is kind of caught up, right? And that's the thing. When Marchand comes back and he scores 2 goals, it's like everybody kind of wakes up and goes like, oh, Bruins are back. Obviously, Krejci's still out. And I look at this, and Pittsburgh just lost 4 straight, I believe it was, on their road trip. And they had a couple of days off. They come home here. They've got this, kind of a high-profile game here against the Bruins. I imagine this is on some sort of national network south of the border. I get it, like Carter out, Letang questionable, not ideal. But right now I still, and I think this is, maybe that's why I show value on Pittsburgh at like a minus 112 is around this part. So I think the market, again, doesn't take long, right? The market catches up on Boston and sort of rates them fairly. And then obviously Pittsburgh kind of gets a bit of a bump down here, having lost 4 straight on the road there. Now they come home, you want to spin a narrative, you can kind of do that. But from a value standpoint, I think Pittsburgh has the short favorite here. That's, honestly, that's my best bet for the night.
Wow.
All
right.
That's my best bet too. And I'm looking at prices right now, and it is being steamed currently, and I'm trying to get in on this here too. So yeah, just give me a second.
Yeah. I'm closer to a play on Pittsburgh as well. Obviously Boston has played great and they're starting to get healthier. But Pittsburgh still ranks 8th in the NHL in high danger chance share at 5-5. They've honestly played pretty well, especially better than the results would suggest of late. And I just they're a veteran team. Mike Sullivan coaches them really well. I don't want to step in and think they're going to lose 5 in a row at home. I mean, anything could happen, but I don't want to get involved.
And they were missing Gensel for a few games too, right? So and now that's being priced in here, and their numbers were still good without him, and he's back here.
Yeah, that Pittsburgh team is always, under Mike Sullivan, been able to put up strong underlying numbers. All right, that wraps up our games of the night. We're going to get into our best bets and best prop bets. Before we do, guys, if you're watching on Twitter, come check us out on YouTube. Again, you can interact with us. Hit the subscribe button. You'll be notified every time we go live. We do these shows every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So get your daily dose of NHL betting action here on the Hammer Betting Network. All right, guys, let's get into our best prop bets of the night / long shot bets. Todd, let's start with you.
My best prop bet would be Alex DeBrincat over 3.5 shots. I believe I got -105 and -110 this morning. He's shooting the puck a ton right now. He's hit the over in 6 of his 8 games so far. With Josh Norris out, he's double shifting on the power play. So over the last 3 games, he's played 6 more minutes on the power play than anyone else on Ottawa. So he's the primary shooter on like PP1 and PP2, so to speak. So like he's taking a ton of shots right now. He's getting a ton of opportunity on the power play. And the Lightning actually have the worst PK metrics in the league right now. So if DeBrincat's going to be on the ice for pretty much the entire power play every time Ottawa gets a man advantage, I'm happy to take the over on him.
Oh, yeah. And yeah, looking like the best price on the board is around +110. You can, if you're in Canada, you can get that, or sorry, Ontario, you can get that at North Star Bets. Matt, not really a prop bet for us today, more of a long shot, but what's your best long shot, I guess, of the night?
So we got a couple here because you want to spread it around a little bit.
Yeah.
Chicago +170. We hit it last week on the Tuesday night show. And like I said, they were in the shootout on Sunday as an underdog. This team I'm interested in backing because their games do get a little bit crazy. That's been the case for the last couple of years. So +170. And then the other one, I'm so close right now to a Seattle Kraken +2. I know everybody loves it. I would like +215, but if you're going to give me +210, I mean, at least we got a lot of runway here up until the game here. Seattle team, again, they pull off occasional victories against some pretty decent teams, right? Like the Sabres have certainly been a capable team, and of course the Kraken beat them earlier last week. So there's a couple of 2 there that I think if one comes in, then we're absolutely fine with what happens. So Chicago and Seattle, separate bets, both big time underdogs.
Love it. And Seattle right now +211 at Pinnacle, and Chicago +175 at Betway. This is all if you're in Ontario. And guys, quickly, if you're looking to bet on these games, use the BetStamp app, or find it on your browser at thebetstamp.app. You can line shop for the best price in your market. And why pay $100 and win $170 when you can win $175? It's simple, guys. So sorry for that quick little plug. Alex, let's get on to your best prop of the night.
I am going with Rasmus Andersson over a half power play points at +265 at Bet365. Dug deep for this one. Not much of not a big prop better, but like the spot here. The handicap is pretty simple. The Kraken are 30th in the NHL on the penalty kill. The Flames are top 10 on the power play. Andersson quarterbacks the top unit. He has 4 power play points in 7 games, which is second on the team, but he is not being priced accordingly, in my opinion. Kadri is +130 to get a power play point. He's had 5 power play points, 1 more than Andersson. Huberdeau's had the same amount. He's +125. Lindholm only got 2. He's +190. So getting +265 with the guy who's quarterback in that power play, I think is a good look.
For sure. All you need is for him to get a little assist, and you're good to go there. All right. Well, that was our best player props. All right, let's get into our best bets of the night. Alex, let's start with you for our best bets.
This is extremely anticlimactic because I am on the Pens, which I said before, that is my best bet. Probably up to I guess I'll have to say up to 120 now, considering where the prices are. There's a -109 out there. There's a -115, couple -115. So yeah, let's say -115 on the Pens, just for the reasons we stated before. I think that the market's caught up to Boston. I think if this game was being priced 2 weeks ago, we're going to see the Pens -125, 130 at least. So,
at least.
Yeah. And with Gensel back here, like Todd said too, a well-coached team under Sullivan, the Pens are my best bet tonight.
Love it. Matt, what do you got for our best bet?
I'll shift. If Pittsburgh wins, we'll let the record show that Pittsburgh was my best bet. If they lose, then we're going to turn our attention to, maybe Washington, maybe the Capitals just stink. That's entirely possible. The metrics certainly suggest that might be the case. And yes, they are on a back-to-back. But this is the first time Vegas has actually had to really travel anywhere all season long. Their road games are Calgary, quick flight north, Seattle, and San Jose. Really quick flights from Vegas. This is the start of their road trip here. You might be concerned, okay, Washington's not starting Kemper. They're starting your boy Chaz Lindgren. He's +2.99 in 2 games in the expected goals or expected saves category. So like we're getting plus 135, 140 on a home underdog here, who again, like hasn't been that great. But again, this is a different setup for this Vegas team where they've had it pretty cushy for the start of this season, which I think has helped them out a little bit. Again, I don't necessarily think that they're going to just be all of a sudden bad because they have to go, because they've actually had to fly somewhere of any distance. But the price here for Vegas is too much for me to pass up. I'm showing a decent value here on the Capitals. So yeah, if Pittsburgh doesn't necessarily come through, we're going to pretend like Washington was my best bet, unless of course Washington gets blown out too, in which case, well, I might not be back here on Tuesday.
All right, well, best price on the board right now, plus 147 at Sports Interaction. All right, our last best bet of the night. Todd, take it away. Let's hear it.
I got the Florida Panthers minus 1.5. Even without Aaron Ekblad, they've been rolling teams at 5-5. They're fifth in the league in high danger chance percentage. The Arizona Coyotes are an absolute disaster. They're dead last. Their high danger chance percentage is only 30%, which is just mind-numbing bad. Like, honestly, if it was 10% higher, it would still be absolutely like god awful. Yeah. Both their goaltenders are negative and goals saved above expected. So, like, Florida's going to dominate this game, and if Arizona's not going to get saves, I don't think it's going to be close.
So I built in about a 6% win probability drop because Ekblad's out, right, over the course of, whatever it's been, a couple of weeks now. And so when, I populate my numbers and then all of a sudden there's a 6% edge on Arizona, I'm like, oh, sweet God, I don't want to bet on Arizona because literally as you mentioned it, Todd, like it is a horror show, right? They're literally 50% worse than an average team, according to like my metrics. It's mind numbing. So I'm like, I don't really want to bet Arizona, but it's like, how did I get to this point? And it's literally like because of that 6% on Ekblad. But like the metrics don't show that the Panthers are any worse without Ekblad, and the market doesn't seem to think that they're any worse without Ekblad. So like, why should I start building in 6% win probability drops because Ekblad's out? Like, what Todd? What's your explanation for the fact that like Ekblad could be out, and not only is everybody like, yeah, that's fine, but like the numbers, show that it's fine. Like, how is somebody that good just kind of not matter that much? Or is it just kind of small sample size?
I think it might be small sample size, but also it's just the forwards are so good. Like they have so many good dominant two-way forwards like Barkov and Kachuk that maybe they can just help mask it better than most teams would be able to. Because I'm with you. When Ekblad went out, I was like, oh, the defense on paper was kind of shit to begin with for like a good team.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem to matter. They just dominate. Like Ottawa's numbers are really good this year. And the other day they got like 50 or 55 shots against them or something, just dominated. So Florida's for real, it seems.
Yeah, it just goes to show, right? Like guys can, it's hard to price when somebody's out, because sometimes it might just not matter, right? And hopefully that's the case for Pittsburgh if Letang doesn't play tonight. But yeah, that's what makes this so difficult, man. Like somebody as theoretically as important as Ekblad doesn't really, ring true, at least for now.
And you know what they say, the best defense is good offense, right? I think that's
Very
the quote.
true.
Maybe. I don't know. Anyways,
No,
all right, guys, that wraps up our best bets of the night. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you're still here on YouTube, guys, give us a subscribe. You'll be notified every time we go live. And that's it for today, guys. I'm signing off for Alex J. Moretto at Alex J. Moretto on Twitter, Matt Russell at MRussAuthentic on Twitter, Todd Cordell at Todd Cordell on Twitter. I'm Jason Cooper, guys. Thank you so much for watching today, and good luck with your bets tonight.